Good morning. Things look a little different in here, don't they? A little more intimate, a little more in the round, a little more togetherness here. There's a reason for that. We're starting a series called Community, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But I wanted to just test a few things out here. I don't know how many of you know this, but I used to play soccer a lot. And so we just have, and sports, my family does sports all the time, right? Volleyball, basketball. Asher just got back from a national tournament playing futsal. Crazy stuff in our family, right? But there's one thing that I can't do. Like, there's a few things I can do with a soccer ball on my own, right? But I can't play soccer by myself. It'd be really boring. Now I got to go chase it. Nobody wants to do that. Football the same way, right? If I were to throw this football, do you trust me? Jason, do you trust me? That defeats the point, though, because you're there to catch it, right? So it feels like a little Deflategate here going on, right? But if I were to throw this football and nobody's there to catch it, I got to go get it and throw it back. Max, you're a pickleball player. How fun is it to do this by yourself? No fun at all, right? There's a lot of things that we do that we don't do alone. We play sports in our family. You were playing with the shaker a little bit ago, right? Yeah? If we brought him up to play the shaker, we'd all celebrate that, and it would be cool. But what if he had a band around him? What if he had other people playing other instruments that just enhanced the thing that he was doing, the thing that he was gifted in? What if you guys just got back from Hawaii, right? Vacation. What if you didn't have someone to rub lotion on your back? You look all good, but you can't move because your back is fried, right? We need each other for lots of things, right? And so we're going to be talking about community and what that looks like here. But there's some things that we do, obviously some silly examples of things that we do we can't do alone. But there's things that we do every day that we require other people for, right? We communicate. Even the concept of communication doesn't make sense if you're by yourself. You don't need to communicate with yourself. You just think about it and you do it. Some of us talk out loud to ourselves, but that's just because we're used to talking to other people and no one's there to listen to us maybe sometimes. But the idea, the concept of communication doesn't even make sense outside of the context of community. When we are together, we create culture. We create culture, shared values, shared interests, shared language. We create culture when we're together. We can't do that alone. We can't create culture on our own. We fall in love, right? Falling in love, that concept doesn't make sense outside of the context of more than one person, right? We need someone else to fall in love with. And on and on and on, right? We're going to be talking about community because it's something that we need. We need one another to live. We need one another to create culture, to communicate with, to support one another, to love one another, to encourage one another. We'll be talking about these things as we go. But this is by design. As you know, we go all the way back sometimes to the beginning of Scripture. So we're going to go back to Genesis 1, right? God created humanity. But first, before we get there, God says, let us create man in our image. So there's something about the nature of God himself that is community. It's a plural word. Let us create man in our image. And people debate what that means. The idea, though, that I want to focus on this morning is God is community. in himself, 3 in 1, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And he created man in his image. But then we read in Genesis 2:18, God says, it's not good for man to be alone. I will make a suitable helper for him. So God says, I live in community. The nature of who I am is community, but I've made this individual to live in community with me, but I see that this individual needs community as well. This individual needs someone, a partner, to do life with that's like him. So he creates female. Male and female, he created them. Creates us for relationship, right? God is relationship. God is community. He creates us not to be individuals, not to be alone, but to be in relationship with one another. So he creates female, male and female. This male and female, they reproduce. That's something you can't do alone. They reproduce and they have kids. One of them's really ugly. And then one of them looks like me. He's younger. He's the younger brother, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't create these. The one just happens to look like me. I don't know. I had to throw it up there. So they have children. They reproduce. Their children have children. They start building communities. They start building civilizations, cities, right? We were built for community. Now, there's this thing called sin that entered in early on to this picture when man was with woman, and that separated, that broke relationship, not just between them and God, but between them and one another. And that sin, as you know, destroys all relationship. It separates all relationship. And we see it throughout the Old Testament. So as people try and live as God intended, there's always this sin, there's always the selfishness that gets in the way and breaks those bonds and breaks those relationships. So we continue to read all through Genesis, and we read that they built such a great city that they thought they were so great, and they wanted to show God who was boss, right? And they built this tower, and God said, nope, that's not happening. We're going to separate you again. The Tower of Babel, he confused them, confused their language. And now the culture and the language and the way they built to communicate has now confused. They had to figure it out all over again. And they continued. And we read, this was post-flood, right? Already the flood was in there between Genesis and Babel. And then we get to Abram that we read about, that we've been studying in the Patriarch series. God calls one man and one woman and says, you are going to be the family through whom I'm going to bless all nations. You are going to be my people, and I will be your God. And we will be in relationship with one another, and we will show the nations what it's like to live in the relationship like that I intended for you. And as you know, sin got in the way, things happened, and centuries later, generations later, they were taken into slavery. God calls Moses. Says, Moses, I want you to rescue my people. I want you to bring them out of slavery in Egypt. I have plans for you. I have plans for this nation. And Moses says, I can't do that. He says, I'm going to send your brother Aaron. He talks better than you anyway. It's more convincing. So he sends Moses and Aaron together in community to confront Pharaoh, to bring the people out. And as they come out, God says, we're starting something brand new here. You will be my people, but you've lived in slavery for 400 years. You don't know what it's like to live as free people. Here's the law. Let me give you the law so you know how to interact with one another. I don't want you to treat each other like the Egyptians treated you and like the Egyptians treated everyone else. I want you to live differently in relationship with me, and here's how that looks. Here are some laws that help shape this relationship. And I want you to live in relationship in community with one another. And this is what it can look like if you do that. So God's intent all the way through was for us to be in relationship with him and relationship with one another. But as you know, again, sin just keeps getting in the way. So we get to the time when they've conquered the land of Canaan, the promised land that the Lord brings them into. And there's no king yet. And they look around and they say, all these other nations have kings. He says, you don't need a king, you have me. I want to be in relationship with you, and I want to lead you. Trust me. And they wanted to have a king, and God said, I'll send you a judge. But in the time of the judges, we read here, in those days, Israel had no king, and everyone did as they saw fit. I want to be in charge. My will, my pride, my desires, I want to do what I want to do. I don't need all these people. I'm going to do what I want to do. And it got them in lots and lots of trouble. Like, we could dive into any of these stories. I know I'm giving you kind of a blow-by of the Old Testament here. But everyone did what was right in their own eyes. We read in Proverbs. And in Judges, everyone did as they saw fit. And it got them into trouble. So God would send a judge to rescue them, bring them back under his authority, under his leadership, back into relationship to some extent, and then they would do it again. And this cycle just continued and continued and continued through the time of the kings, through the time of the prophets, and then God goes silent. He's silent for 400 years. As you know, as we celebrate on December 25th, that's when we celebrate. That's probably not when it happened. This baby was born. The incarnate God, Jesus himself, was born in the flesh, lived a life that was free from this sin that separates all of us, and then became the perfect sacrifice to pay the price for those sins so that we could then be in relationship with God once again. Jesus made a way for us to be back in relationship. He reconciled us with our God. But it didn't stop there. Like, a lot of times, I think when we preach the gospel, we talk about this, that is the key moment, the death and the resurrection of Jesus that paves a way for us to be in relationship with God. But that's just the beginning. There's so much more beyond. He says, step into this relationship. I want to show you what I have for you. I want you to experience the kingdom of God the way we intended, the way I intended when I created at the beginning, for us to be in relationship and in community with each other, with me and you and everyone else around you. So we step into the kingdom, and Jesus says, here's what I want you to do. He gave us the greatest commandment, to love one another, right? As he first loved us. To love one another as he loves us. He was willing to lay his life down on our behalf. Do we love each other that much? And so Jesus continued. He gave us all these other one another statements. He gives us, instead of the law in the Old Testament, he gives us these one another passages. This is what it looks like. I've made the way. So the law was the law. It was intended to show you the way, but no one can keep the law. I did it for you. Now, this is what I want for you. Be in relationship with me. Be in relationship with one another. And I'm going to give you some guidelines on what that looks like. And so we have these one another statements in Scripture that we're going to build this community series around. Jason, would you come down here for just a moment? Depends on what resource you look at. One I looked at said there's 59 one another statements in the New Testament. Another says there's 100. Another gave me another number, but it's the way they phrase it. Does it literally say one another, or do they count each other? So it depends on what you look at. But the point is, there are a lot of these one another statements in the New Testament. I'm just going to throw a couple on the screen here. You'll recognize them. Love one another. Love one another. Encourage one another. These come from Jesus. These come from Paul. These come from Peter. These come from the writers in the New Testament. Serve one another. Pray for one another. Spur one another on. And carry one another's burdens. I couldn't get an S on there, sorry. Carry one another's burdens. this concept of one another seems really important, even beyond kicking a soccer ball. You can't play soccer without one another. You can't play football without one another. You can't play pickleball without one another. You can't create culture without one another. You can't communicate without one another. We can't follow Jesus without one another. We can't do this without one another. So we're building this series, Community, about these one another statements. Jason, I just wanted to talk through the next couple weeks with you, ask you a couple questions, because Jason will be preaching through some of these. We don't have years to go through, or 6 months or whatever, depending on the number you look at, to go through all the one another statements. We're going to pick a handful. Let you share a little bit about which ones.
Yeah, of course. Next week, we are going to look at the most important one, love one another. We're going to look at love one another. The following week, we're going to look at carry one another's burdens. And then the week following, spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Those are the three that we're going to focus on. And then the week following, we're going to kind of wrap everything up, wrap the series up.
So love one another seems like a pretty important one. That was Jesus' final command to us, right? The greatest commandment. Love one another. You said encourage one?
Carry one another's
burdens and spur one another on are the three. So why those three? Out of all the ones we could have chosen, why those three?
I like them. Well, I do like
You're the
them.
pastor.
Yeah. Well, so they fit really, really nicely with our mission statement and our 3 B's. It's exactly the 3 B's, really, if you think about it. And we'll be unpacking those in the next 3 weeks. So yeah, it fits really nicely with the 3 B's, what God has called us to do as a church.
And those are again?
Yeah. So becoming, belonging, and blessing.
Okay. So give us a little teaser for next week. Why should we come back? I know we should come back, but give us a little teaser about what you're talking about next week.
All right. Well, I'll just highlight it here. So, you can, I think the first one's up there, John 13:34. You guys know this, right? I mean, we hear this all the time. This is really important. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. So Jesus is sharing his last moments with his disciples before he dies, his last Passover meal with them, a real intimate setting. And he says, hey, I have a new commandment for you. And for us, I think we just kind of read by that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to us. But a new commandment, this would have kind of blown them away. And we have lots of commandments, and you're giving us a new one. And he says, love one another. Well, love one another was not a new commandment for them. They had already been taught love one another. It states to love one another in the Old Testament commands. But then he continues, love one another as I have loved you. And that is a totally new command, because that's impossible without God empowering us to do so, to love as he loved, because he had just washed their feet right before he said this, took on the duty of a servant, a slave, and washed their feet, which they just could not comprehend why the Messiah would do that. And then the next day, he would die for them, lay down his life for them. So it's exactly, he showed them exactly what that commandment was all about. Love one another. And listen, I know we hear it all the time. We hear love, love, love. And we just have this concept of love based on our experience and what it means to us today. But the kind of love that Jesus commanded is really earth-shattering. I mean, we completely underestimate the power of that kind of love when it comes to bringing God's kingdom to bear upon this earth and this reality in the world that we're facing. That kind of love is just earth-shattering and life-changing. And so, listen, as the people of God, we're being formed into a community of faith, a community of people who look and act just like Jesus. That's the becoming.
I think about that one. I know you'll probably talk more next week about that, but I think about that one and they go, yeah, he was really kind to us. He healed people. He, cast out demons, but they didn't know the full extent of the love that Jesus had for them probably until the next 4 days, right? After the crucifixion and the resurrection, and he showed back up. And then it dawned on them, like, there's more to that command, I think, than I thought 4 days ago, right?
Yeah.
So love one another. The second one that in 2 weeks you'll be talking about, carry one another's burdens.
Carry one another's burdens. Carry each other's burdens. There it is in the NIV. Each other. That's a form. Like
we can't do that one then.
Yeah, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. So, let me just back up a second. The rest of the one another's, in fact, the rest of the New Testament is an application of love one another. How do you love one another? And then he gives the rest of the one another's, and the New Testament, these letters are written to show us how. What does this actually look like? You'll fulfill the law of Christ if you carry one another's burdens. So the Christian Standard Bible says, just to stay consistent, says, carry one another's burdens, and this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. So,
all right, we can do it.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Since it says one another there.
Yeah, we won't use the NIV that week. But we all have burdens, right? I think all of us would have to admit this morning we've got burdens. We've got physical burdens. We've got emotional burdens. We've got mental burdens. We've got burdens of sin in our lives. We've got relational burdens. We're all carrying burdens, right? If we're going to admit that, we are all carrying burdens. And these burdens have a potential to hold us all back. For sure. In following Jesus, in being the people that God called us to be, these burdens will hold us back. And so, as followers of Jesus, we are to walk alongside one another and lift those burdens and carry those burdens. And we're doing that for others. What about us? Well, then someone's supposed to walk alongside of me and lift those burdens and carry those burdens. We're supposed to do this for one another. And this is what healthy churches do. This is what healthy churches do. We do this for one another, and this is so powerful. There's power in this. Equipping one another for acts of service. This isn't just the pastor's responsibility. A healthy church, we're all being equipped for these acts of service and carrying one another's burdens. We'll talk about what that looks like in a couple weeks.
All right. I love there's a distinction there. There's another verse later on that talks about each one should carry his own load, but we should carry one another's burdens. And I don't know if you'll talk about that. It's just always one that really stuck out to me. What are we supposed to carry on our own, and what are the things that we need help carrying? Because that's a heavy lift, heavy load. And then in 3 weeks, we're talking about spurring one another on.
Yeah, from Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Spur one another on toward love and good deeds. So I mentioned when we talked about love one another that we are being formed into a community of faith, a community that looks and acts like Jesus. But we're being formed for a reason, right? We're being formed into a community of faith that looks and acts like Jesus for the sake of the world. For the sake of the world. That's the reason. That's the purpose. God's up to something in the world. He's doing his work of restoration in the world, and we get to be a part of it. He uses the church to be a part of his work of restoration in the world. This is a big deal, and this is exciting. Spurring one another on toward love and good deeds in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, in our schools, here in this community and around the world. That's why the church is here, to be the people of God, being formed into the image of God, people that look like Jesus for a reason, for the sake of the world. God so loved the world that he gave. So we'll talk about that in 3 weeks.
Yep.
What that looks like.
Yeah, so lots of good stuff. We could talk about community anytime. We could talk about these one another passages anytime. Jason, why this series and why now?
Well, if you've been around Living Grace for a while, you know that I typically talk about our mission at the beginning of the year and then towards the end of the summer. And I've been doing this for a while, just continually being reminded of why we're doing what we're doing. And, you know, we have to continually be reminded why we're here in this place. You know, it's about giving, not just receiving, and it's about engaging and not just attending. It's about participating and not just consuming and taking all this in, right? It's the purpose. And so a lot of times, this is a pet peeve of mine. Sometimes people that get in a conversation with me, and it's not just me, it's with other pastors' experiences as well. They find out I'm a pastor, and one of the first things they ask is, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, how many people go to your church? What's your attendance look like? And we just came back from the UB National Conference this past week, and I don't. It's just kind of a habit, I think. Are you growing? How many people are coming on Sundays? That's what pastors ask each other too. It's just a question that we ask, and I don't like that question because it communicates that success is determined by a worship service on Sunday morning, how well you can put on a worship service, how well you can preach, and how great your worship services are. That is what success, that's what that communicates. But that's not where success lies. There are large churches that are very, very successful when it comes to the kingdom of God and being faithful. And there are really, really small churches who are successful. The question to ask is, are you growing? Are you following Jesus? Are you making disciples? And sometimes that equates with, and that at some point needs to equate to multiplication. But are we being faithful followers of Jesus? Are we following Jesus? And are we helping others follow Jesus? And listen, that can't really happen on Sunday mornings. It doesn't happen through preaching. It doesn't happen through worship services. Preaching and worship services are important, but actually following Jesus and making disciples happens life on life, through community, through relationship, as we leave these doors on Sunday morning. That's how we follow Jesus, and that's how we make disciples. And so it's everyday relationships in the midst of everyday life.
And the way we do that here at Living Grace is through community groups,
right?
Which we'll be launching this fall. We've got some community groups going now. Raise your hand if you are a part of a community group. We've got a large percentage of people in the room already involved in community groups. We're going to be sharing a little bit about what community groups are for those of you who are interested in being a part of it. We're going to share a little bit about what they are. You're going to hear stories from people that have been involved in them, and we're going to launch some new groups. So if you're not a part of a group and it maybe feels a little awkward stepping into one that's already going, we can do that, or we can help you start a new group as well. So I didn't ask you to raise your hands to alienate anybody. I just wanted, for those of you who are not a part, if you have questions, to see the people who are, that you can just ask questions. What's it like? Where do you guys meet? Those sorts of things. So that was the only reason I did that. And to do that, to help launch these community groups and to help share these stories, Tom, would you come down here for just a minute? We have an event coming up in August that Tom Mathis here is championing for us, has helped making all the plans and all the good stuff. So Tom, I'll let you share a little bit about it.
So a lot of times I'm going to wrap up here, but a lot of times in like I said, in the church world, it's communicated that, it's all about worship services, and it's about getting people to attend these worship services, and so it's about preaching, it's about sermons, it's about worship and programs and all that stuff that happens on Sunday mornings. And while those things are important, that's not the main event. The main event is happens as we leave the doors. It's life, following Jesus, making disciples through everyday moments of life. That's the main event. And so to remind us of that, I have some questions that I want us to consider. And if you want to write these down, you can. You can jot them down on your iPhone, or there are index cards under your chairs if you want to write these down. Take these with you, however you'll remember. I want you to consider asking someone these questions this week. At least one person. How are you doing? Like, we ask that question, hey, how are you doing? Oh, fine. But really ask the question, how are you doing really? I mean, how is life for you? How are you really doing? How can I pray for you and then pray for them? Sometimes I know I'm guilty of asking people how I can pray, and then I forget to pray. You might want to jot those prayer requests down and pray for them, and maybe even take it a step further and say, how can I pray with you? And then pray with them in the moment, right when you're with them, over the phone, over text, whatever, face to face. And then if it's someone that you know well, or maybe it's not, maybe there's an opportunity that presents itself. How is your walk with Jesus? How is your walk with the Lord? How are you doing with him? Are you growing in your faith? And how can I come alongside of you? Is there a way that I can help? Consider asking someone those questions this week.